In June 2013, Arizona was suffering through its usual summer heat. 19-year-old college student Adrienne Celeste Salinas left her rented apartment and disappeared without a trace. The day before, she had argued with her boyfriend, been involved in a car accident, and tried to call a taxi. After that moment, there was no sign of her. She had no money and no identification with her. Her family raised the alarm. The police launched an investigation. Volunteers joined the search. Week after week, however, the search brought no results, and only a devastating summer storm uncovered something that had been hidden for a long time. But even that discovery gave no answers. It only raised more questions. Adrienne Celeste Salinas was born on November 5, 1993, in Arizona. She was the first child of Rick and Pauline Salinas. 2 years later, the couple had a son, whom they named Nathaniel. The family lived a normal life until Pauline was diagnosed with a serious illness. After several years of treatment and fighting for her health, she died. At that time, Adrienne was 5 years old, and her brother was 3. After his wife's death, Rick was left alone with 2 young children. He continued working, while also raising them. His role was not only to provide for the family financially, but also to give the children his full attention so they would not feel neglected. All household and parenting responsibilities fell solely on his shoulders. Rick worked for a local company and also coached at the school his children attended. This allowed him to earn more money and spend more time with his children. He coached the school soccer team his son played on, and he led the volleyball lessons Adrienne attended. The father and children were very close. They discussed all kinds of things with him, shared their experiences, and asked him for advice. He was the most reliable person in their lives. From a young age, Adrienne was friendly and outgoing. She found it easy to start conversations with other people. She always had many friends, and people appreciated her sincerity, helpfulness, and easygoing nature. Adrienne was striking in appearance. She was attractive, with a distinctive look and a slim figure, and she often drew the attention of the opposite sex. At the age of 10, Adrienne met Francisco Arteaga, a student 1 year older than her. They immediately got along, began talking often, and quickly became close. Their friendship gradually developed into a romantic relationship. For Adrienne, these were her first strong feelings. Among their friends, they were seen as a couple. Francisco was the first young man with whom Adrienne had a close relationship. However, he did not acknowledge any serious commitment between them. He said he was still too young, that he was not ready for responsibility, and that he did not want to settle down. He did not hide his contact with other girls. He would have brief affairs and then return to Adrienne without explanation. He did not talk about his behavior, did not apologize, and made no promises for the future. Nevertheless, their relationship continued, and they stayed in contact. Adrienne did not make scenes or show jealousy. She hoped that Francisco would eventually change. She remained loyal, believing that he would understand the importance of their relationship. Later, it seemed as if Francisco had become more serious, but that confidence proved to be false. Even during her school years, Adrienne had decided that she wanted to become a journalist. After graduating, she enrolled in college and studied with the dream of entering television journalism and public relations. Although she lived in Arizona, she decided to live on her own and moved into a rented apartment in a quiet neighborhood. She shared the apartment with two friends. They had known each other well, trusted one another, and each had her own room, which allowed them to live together comfortably without disturbing one another. Rick had no objection to his daughter moving out, especially because she did not live far away, only about a 20-minute drive from home. They stayed in regular contact, spoke often on the phone, and visited each other. For her 18th birthday, her father gave Adrienne a car, which made getting around easier and made trips home more comfortable. She found studying easy and enjoyed student life. But during her second semester, Adrienne developed a persistent cough that would not go away. She thought it was only a common cold and initially tried to treat it herself without seeing a doctor. Her condition worsened. The cough became stronger. She had difficulty breathing, and the symptoms continued day and night. Finally, she became so ill that she had to be hospitalized. There, doctors diagnosed her with a severe fungal infection of the lungs, commonly known in Arizona as valley fever. The illness was already far advanced, so doctors decided on emergency surgery. Most of the affected part of her left lung was removed. Despite the seriousness of the diagnosis, her recovery was rapid. After a month, Adrienne was discharged home, where she continued her rehabilitation. After a few more weeks, she returned to her studies and caught up on the missed lectures without any major problems. On June 14, 2013, the girls who lived with Adrienne in the apartment decided to throw a birthday party for one of their friends. About 40 guests came, including Francisco. But according to those who attended, Adrienne spent most of the time in her room and barely spoke to the others. The reason was the recent tension in her relationship with Francisco. He had begun openly flirting with another girl, ignoring Adrienne's presence. Although she had remained faithful to him and had never allowed herself to flirt with other men, Francisco continued to insist that he did not want a serious relationship. He explained that he was not ready for commitment. Soon, a conflict broke out between them. After the argument, Adrienne locked herself in her room. Later, Francisco came to her door. They spoke privately, and then left the apartment together. After some time, Adrienne returned alone. She went to her room, packed a few things, and left again. After that, no one saw her alive again. The roommates did not wake up until the afternoon of June 15. After the party, the apartment was in a chaotic state. Trash, empty bottles, leftover food, broken furniture, and belongings scattered everywhere. While they were cleaning up, they did not immediately notice that Adrienne was missing. No one opened her door, assuming she was still asleep. When it became clear that Adrienne was not home, the girls did not panic. They assumed she had stayed with Francisco, remembering that they had left the party together. For that reason, no one searched for her for almost 2 days, and no one suspected that something terrible might have happened. Father's Day was celebrated in the United States on June 16. Adrienne's father, Rick, expected his daughter to come to him, as she had in previous years. However, she did not appear and did not contact him. Her phone was switched off. Rick became worried and went to the apartment where his daughter lived. Her roommates were surprised to see him and said they had not seen Adrienne since Friday. They assumed she had gone home or to Francisco's place. Rick contacted the young man, but Francisco explained that he had not seen Adrienne since the party either. Her father immediately reported her missing to the police. The arriving investigators began reconstructing the sequence of events. They had to determine exactly what had happened that night. First, they identified all the party guests and began questioning witnesses. They also searched Adrienne's room, where several details immediately caught their attention. The young woman's personal belongings were in the room. Her wallet with bank cards, her driver's license, and her cell phone. This raised questions because her friends claimed she had taken everything with her when she left the apartment again. On the floor next to the nightstand lay the key to her car. Adrienne had no spare key, and the car itself was nowhere near the house. Investigators wondered how the car could have disappeared if the only key had remained in the apartment. Suspicion fell on Francisco. He was brought in for questioning. He confirmed that there had indeed been an argument that night, caused by jealousy. According to him, after the argument, they decided to go to his place anyway, but the argument continued in the car. At one point, Adrienne asked him to stop and got out. Francisco obeyed and drove away, leaving her alone. Around 3 a.m., Adrienne returned to the apartment. The party was still going on, but most of the guests were very drunk, and no one noticed her arrival. During that time, she began repeatedly calling Francisco. Several calls were recorded, but he did not answer. He explained that he had gone to sleep and turned off the ringer on his phone. She also sent him a text message saying that she was coming over. After that, she took some belongings and apparently drove away. However, after about an hour, she returned, left her car keys, phone, and purse in the apartment, changed her clothes, and left again. This time, she disappeared for good. The police reviewed the traffic accidents record from that night. Around 4 a.m., emergency services received a call from a witness reporting a traffic accident. He had seen a white 2002 Mercury Sable lose control, hit a curb, and sustain significant damage. The front tires were blown out and the bumper was damaged. After that, the car suddenly sped away from the scene of the accident. The witness wanted to come and help, but the driver had disappeared. He noted the car's license plate number and gave it to the dispatcher. It later turned out to be Adrienne's car. When the official search began, Francisco and Adrienne's father searched the surrounding streets. They found the car on a side street not far from the apartment. The vehicle was damaged, the front tires were flat, and the bumper was badly damaged. Everything matched the description from the accident scene. Forensic technicians immediately arrived at the location to examine the car and secure any possible evidence that could help the investigation. However, no traces of blood, signs of a struggle, or foreign fingerprints were found inside the car. The car was locked and secured with an alarm system. Based on all the information gathered, investigators were able to reconstruct the likely sequence of events. There had been a conflict between Adrienne and Francisco. Later, they reconciled and drove away together in his car. However, another argument followed on the way, and Adrienne got out of the car and decided to walk home. When she returned to the apartment, she tried to contact Francisco but could not reach him. She then decided to drive to his place herself. Being intoxicated, Adrienne likely lost control of the vehicle, hit a curb, damaged the car, and fled the scene, possibly fearing that she might lose her driver's license. Toward morning, she returned to the apartment, changed her clothes, but for unknown reasons left all of her personal belongings behind: her phone, documents, and keys. Then she left again. Where did she go without any means of communication? Where she was going remained unclear. The possible connection to Francisco was also examined, but he was soon ruled out as a suspect. He agreed to take a polygraph test, and according to the investigation, he had nothing to do with the disappearance. Before finally leaving the apartment, Adrienne tried to call a taxi. The usual services were not working, so she called a small local private taxi company. That was the last outgoing call from her phone. The company belonged to Thomas Simon and his son, Thomas Simon Jr. Both were questioned by police, but they were not initially summoned to the station. Each of them was interviewed by phone. The father was in the office. The son was out driving. When he received the call from law enforcement, he pulled over to the side of the road to take it. Thomas Simon Jr. said the call had indeed come from Adrienne. However, he had just finished a previous order. According to him, Adrienne agreed to come to a nearby gas station so he could pick her up there. When he arrived, however, the girl was not there. He waited for a while, tried to call her, received no answer, and drove away. This statement was supported by surveillance camera footage from the gas station. The car did indeed pull up there around 4:30 a.m., waited for about 15 minutes, and then drove away without picking anyone up. That evening, police received a call from a woman who had been a passenger in Thomas Simon Jr.'s car earlier that day. She reported that the driver had received a call from police while driving and had pulled over to the side of the road to speak with law enforcement. The woman noticed that the young man appeared visibly tense and very nervous during the phone call. After finishing the call, he got out of the car, opened the trunk, and took out an object that, according to her, resembled a saw. He then got back behind the wheel and drove away. The woman found the driver's behavior strange. When she later learned from the news about the student's disappearance and connected it with the driver's phone call to police, she decided to report the incident to law enforcement. This information raised investigators' suspicions, and they decided to question Thomas Simon Jr. personally. A search warrant was also obtained for his car and his home. However, no suspicious items, including a saw, were found during the search. No traces of blood or other evidence were discovered in the car. The suspicions could not be confirmed, and charges were not possible. During questioning, the young man became irritable and refused to cooperate. He refused to answer some questions and declined a polygraph test. Despite his behavior, no direct evidence was found linking him to Adrienne's disappearance. The investigation gradually reached a dead end. No new evidence appeared. Witnesses had nothing more to report, and the girl's whereabouts remained unknown. Hope of finding her alive gradually faded. A month after her disappearance, in July 2013, a severe monsoon storm with torrential rain and thunderstorms struck Arizona. On July 21, widespread flooding occurred in the eastern part of the Phoenix area. Washes and streams overflowed, carrying debris and objects with them. The flooding was among the most serious in years. On August 6, 2013, as the water had receded, a resident was walking his dog in the flood-affected area. While searching through the area, he came across human remains. He immediately reported the discovery to police, believing it might be the body of a drowning victim. The remains were sent to a forensic laboratory for identification and examination. Medical examiners concluded that death had occurred more than a month earlier. The remains belonged to a young woman, and because of clear signs of previous surgical intervention, particularly the absence of part of a lung, investigators suspected they might belong to Adrienne, who had disappeared in June. This assumption was later confirmed by DNA analysis. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the exact cause of death could not be determined. Experts were also unable to determine whether the victim had been subjected to physical or sexual violence. No foreign DNA was found on the body. One injury drew particular attention. Part of the left hand was missing. This damage was so severe that investigators could not determine whether it had been caused by an instrument or whether it had occurred because of water movement during the flood. The remains were found approximately 30 miles from where Adrienne had last been seen. Considering the movement of floodwater, investigators suggested that the body may have been carried away by the current. The original location of the body before it was moved by water could not be determined. Although the area was searched with dogs, no additional clues or personal belongings belonging to Adrienne were found. The cause of death remained undetermined. No gunshot wounds, stab wounds, or cutting injuries were found on the body. The case stalled once again. Due to the lack of new information, the investigation went cold. However, almost 2 years after Adrienne's disappearance, a man named Keen Azariah contacted police. He explained that he suspected his acquaintance, Brian Patrick Miller, of being connected to the young woman's death. Miller was known in certain circles by the nickname Zombie Hunter. Although he was over 50 at the time, he actively participated in events such as Comic-Con, themed parties, and cosplay festivals. He often appeared in the same outfit, which over the years had become his recognizable alter ego. He even customized his car in the style of zombie movies, with artificial damage and fake bloodstains. In everyday life, Brian behaved quietly and cautiously. In public, however, he presented himself as a noticeable and active figure, while at the same time leaving a disturbing impression. In early 2015, Miller became a suspect in a murder case that had occurred more than 2 decades earlier. In 1992, 22-year-old Angela Brasso disappeared. Her body was later found in a canal with signs of violence, and her head had been removed. In 1993, 17-year-old Melanie Bernas disappeared. She too was found dead near the Arizona Canal. Signs of violence were found on her body. At the time, the killer could not be identified. Although biological material had been taken from the victims' bodies, no match was found in the DNA database. Only years later, with advances in technology, was it determined that both crimes had been committed by the same person. The identity remained unknown until 2015, when investigators connected the evidence to Brian Patrick Miller through DNA and forensic genealogy. This is how Miller came to the attention of investigators in the old canal murder cases. Keen Azariah, who had known Miller for many years, kept a personal diary. When he learned that the cold cases had resurfaced, he began analyzing his notes and the events of the past several years. He discovered that Brian Patrick Miller had been present at an event at Adrienne's home on the night she disappeared. Miller had posted photos from that event on social media, including the location. The time frame matched the period during which Adrienne was last seen, so it was possible that they could have crossed paths by chance. It also emerged that Miller had connections to the area, near where Adrienne's remains were later found. The information provided by Kani A. Azaria was interesting, but it required careful verification. Miller's home was searched several times, but it proved almost impossible to find anything useful there. His entire residence resembled a junkyard. Every room was packed with all kinds of items, from books, records, and comic book costumes to broken furniture and appliances that he had dragged into the home over the years, intending to repair them or turn them into something useful. Despite this, nothing was found that connected Brian Patrick Miller to Adrienne's death. The suspect categorically denied any involvement in the young woman's disappearance or possible death, claiming that he had never seen her, even though some elements of the crimes appeared disturbing and similar. It was not until April 2023 that Brian Patrick Miller's case went to trial. He was found guilty of murdering Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas. In June 2023, he was sentenced to death for those murders. Miller was also suspected in connection with another disappearance, but because there was not enough evidence, he was not convicted in that case. Adrienne's case never went to trial. Due to the lack of solid evidence, since no one has been charged, and in recent years there have been no suspects, no new witnesses, and no significant leads. This crime remains unsolved, one of the most mysterious and darkest stories in the history of Phoenix. Thank you for watching, and please take care.